3, 2, 1. And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to A Nice Place to Brew. I'm Jason.
And I am George.
This is December 17th. This is our Thursday webcast. We do the webcast here on the Facebook and YouTube every Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We do an audio podcast under the same name, A Nice Place to Brew. It's available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, all those places you get your podcast from. Our website is www.aniceplacetobrew.com. And our social media links are Nice Place to Brew and A Nice Place to Brew. Welcome, everybody. Hope everybody's having a real great week. We have a guest who will be joining us within a few minutes. It's not guest has not arrived just yet, but should not be too long. We have our special guest is Steve, who helps run a website called homebrewacademy.com. So tonight's going to be a very in-depth homebrew conversation, which I'm very much looking forward to. Before we get into that, let's get into formalities. George, what are you drinking tonight?
I've been on a cider kick, so I'm still doing apple cider.
Look how clear that is.
Yeah, they do a really good job with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool.
What about yourself?
I have, take a look, a nice copper brown ale. No, copper pale ale.
Okay, that makes more sense. All right.
And the place that it came from is...
Oh, nice. Old School Brewing.
Courtesy of Mr. Pauly from Route 66 Old School Brewing in Wilmington, Illinois. Pauly and I made an Imperial Stout over the weekend, which I'm sure we'll talk about later here on the podcast. Pauly was nice enough to bring over a couple of crowlers, and this was one of them. So
nice.
6.6%, 32 ounces of this. I think I'll be feeling no pain by the end of this webcast.
I think that's probably right.
Yeah. Anyways, George, how's your week been homebrewing wise?
Homebrewing wise, it's been I think I mentioned last time that I've been working on my shed, so I did a lot of that over the weekend and got a lot of that done. So I'm very happy with that. Haven't done a whole lot. Like I said, my brewing's on hold, but getting ready for all of that and doing some research on that. So what about yourself? I know yours has been a little bit more eventful than me.
It has. There's been two batches in a fairly short time. So Pauly, and as I mentioned, Pauly and I made an Imperial Stout this past weekend. That is fermenting here at the house.
Okay.
And this is fermenting with USO4, which, despite being a very common yeast, I have not. This is one I have not used before, and I don't have a real good reason for. I don't really have a good reason for why I haven't, but here we are. So this is part of a barrel project. So we got ingredients for this just from the club. Put all the together. It makes a beer that's original gravity is meant to be like right on 110, like 1.1. And we had a pretty good brew day. I'm a little puzzled by the recipe a little bit. I didn't design it, and we just kind of inherited it for the project. I'd like to have the recipe architect on so I could ask some questions about that, but maybe that's a future show. But the brew day went well. It reminded me once again that brewing in December in the Midwest is harsh. So we braved the elements though quite well, and we got the brew day started early and done in time before the sun went down and before it got really, really cold. So
nice.
So the beer fermented quickly. Like 2 dry packets of USO4 took off in less than 12 hours, and we're now 72 hours past the initial pitch, and the Kreuzen has already gone down. Which is unexpected for a 1092 beer. But I'm going to kind of let it sit and see kind of where that goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Send a quick hello to Uncle Rick, who I see is listening here. Rick, thank you so much for joining us. Yes, if I said the name wrong, yes, this is Paulie's Take a Deep Breath Pale Ale from Route 66 Old School Brewing. Our guest has arrived, and I will be bringing him in here in 2 seconds.
Okay.
Steve?
Hey, Steve.
Hello. Hey, guys. How are you?
Good. Good evening to you.
Good.
Yep, doing all right.
Your guest. You make me sound important or something.
we got plenty to talk about. Well, okay. We got to ask. We got to start off. We are live. We just your timing is actually good. We just got done with the intros. We just kind of gave some background on our weeks. And before we talk about your week, let's get to the important stuff first. What are you drinking tonight, sir?
I am keeping it all things Darien and drinking a Vox Pilsner from over at Miskatonic.
Okay.
Just there a couple weeks ago to pick up their cellar, their small series, the brown ale, and then the Russian Imperial. And I picked up a 6-pack of Vox as well. So I just finished the first 3 seasons of, or 2 seasons, whatever it is, of Cobra Kai on Netflix. And seeing Johnny Lawrence drinking the small little banquet beers. And
the little bullet bottles?
Yeah, the bottles. So
yeah.
Mr. Tonic was using something very similar. So I'm like, you know what? I just need to grab that beer. So just made my way over. It's like a mile away from my house, so it's convenient.
Good deal. Good deal. So we got 2 people from Darien here on this webcast. I like it. You get this cheesy part out of the way. A nice place to brew, of course, is a play on words. You living in Darien, you certainly have seen the intro, the welcome signs right around a nice place to live, which has been an inside joke for many years.
Yeah, no, I like it. When I first discovered your what you were doing, I always kind of laughed and chuckled at that. But I like it, so it works.
Good deal.
It's a good conversation starter. So
I agree.
It's always right.
It always annoyed my wife because she's like, "That's the best you could do. Like, it's it's just a nice place to live."
That's it. Yeah, no creativity at all.
I think my wife has said the same thing.
So I have a lot of questions about your website, homebrewacademy.com, which I highly encourage all of our listeners to check out. But before we go into that, can you give a little background on your homebrewing background?
So I started homebrewing actually in 1999. So it was a one and done type of situation. I brewed an American brown ale. I was living in an apartment with a friend of mine by Midway Airport, and I brewed it, and I kind of botched the whole bottling process. I didn't add the sugar to the wort, and for some stupid reason, I thought that was the right way to go. So it was extremely flat. Used it for cooking and stuff like that, made some chili and whatnot, and then returned to the remaining 6-pack of it, and it actually naturally carbonated itself, and it was actually pretty decent. But I never really touched my equipment after that. I bought it from 2 brothers out in Warrenville at the time, and never touched the equipment after that. I then picked it up again in 2013 when a friend of mine who I happened to work with, and he lived 2 doors down from me here in Darien, and he was making a clone of Sierra Nevada's Torpedo IPA. And I had it, and I'm like, wow, you made this? And this is awesome. And he wasn't too fond of it. He was always really critical of his beers, but I liked it, and I figured, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot again. So I bought a kit from Austin Brewing Company, or Austin Homebrew Supply out in Austin, Texas. And I think it was a red ale or a winter warmer, one of the two. And my wife loved it. I actually entered the winter warmer into a competition with square kegs out in the city, and it actually placed. So I figured, well, okay, I'm doing something right if I'm winning competitions already. So I stuck with it and have become obsessed with home brewing ever since.
That's awesome. How quickly did you dive into all grain?
Pretty, I'd say about 2 years, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it took me a little bit, but I was enjoying what I was doing with extract. I didn't really, bother it too much. It was good. And then I started joining my first homebrew club, Plainfield Ale and Lager Enthusiasts out in Plainfield, Illinois. And I started talking to more guys there and started to go all grain. Did 2 or 3 batches where I was, sparging and everything else. And I'm like, getting stuck sparges all the time just really sucks. So I'm going to go with brew in a bag. Luckily, one of the guys who became a good friend now, he came up with the brew bag idea. So he sold me on it, and I've been using the brew bag ever since.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. George, who just came back, I know you're going to have some questions on this. So Steve's background, he went from all grain and then went to brew in a bag, and he's and you're still brewing a bag now, Steve?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have another system in my garage, which I'll get to later. But yeah, it's primarily brew in a bag for
Okay.
5 years or so.
That's awesome.
Yeah, my whole philosophy is just keeping it really, really simple. Spending my money on good ingredients, supporting, people like at Chicago Brew Works to buy supplies and whatnot. So that's where my money goes.
Right on.
Yeah.
The most interesting thing about the brew in a bag systems is everybody has a slightly different way of solving the I need to lift a super heavy bag out of the kettle. So what's yours?
I strong arm it, and I have a metal grate that you would use for a barbecue grill, and I put that on top of my my kettle as I am kind of finagling the bag with one hand and putting the grate on top of the kettle. So I'll have my daughter come out and help me if I'm really desperate, if I'm doing a bigger batch or whatever. Although I have, for some really big batches, I was out in the garage with a friend of mine several years ago doing a barrel-aged beer, and we had 25 pounds of grain in the bag. And so I used a chain and then the things in my ceiling to hold the bikes. So it was supported. It wasn't going to move anything and mess anything up, and it worked. We hung it up there with a hook and everything, and it worked. So yes, I do squeeze the bag. There's a lot of as much of people talking about how do you lift the bag up and stuff. There's as many people talking about what do you do with the bag? Do you squeeze it? Do you not squeeze it? Tannins, no tannins.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I squeeze the hell out of it, and usually get some pretty decent beer out of it. So I'm happy.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean that's always the most interesting part to me because I'm guessing if you can just strong arm it and put a grate underneath it, you're a pretty strong guy. But for me, I know I would definitely be rigging some kind of pulley system.
And Rex from the Brewing Bag, he actually does sell the whole pulley systems and stuff like that. Usually my wife's car is in the garage, so I'm always just kind of just like, I'll just use the grate and do it that way.
Okay.
But, yeah, each their own. It works either way.
For sure. So, all right.
sending a link out.
Okay. So, but aside from that, you have, I'm sorry, it's Homebrew Academy.
Homebrew Academy, yeah.
Yep.
So
okay. So you want to talk about what people will find there?
Is a site that I kind of fell into. It was about 3 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago. They sent out the previous owners of Homebrew Academy. They sent out a message on some Facebook homebrew pages saying, who wants to be a writer for Homebrew Academy? And I'm like, yeah, it sounds kind of interesting. I'm an English major by, and I'm a reading teacher by trade. So the whole writing thing is, I'm understanding it, and I'm not saying I'm great at it, but I understand it. And so I went ahead and submitted some articles to them, and they liked it and started writing for them. And then shortly after, I became their editor, and still publishing things, but now there's a nice little fee coming my way from them.
Okay.
Payment for what I'm doing. So that was always nice.
Nice.
And then they sort of took a hiatus. I wasn't writing for about 3 or 4 months. And then lo and behold, one of the guys who I had known for a little bit contacted me and said, hey, I just bought out Homebrew Academy. I had this great project. We wanted to see if you're interested. And so the new owner, who lives out in Grand Rapids, we became, started talking, and he was really interested in this project that he had going, where there is a guy by the name of Martin Keene who lives out in Pennsylvania, I believe, and he is doing this 99 beer brewing challenge. I'm butchering the name. There's an official name to it that I'm butchering right now. But essentially, he's brewing once a weekend and going through all of the BJCP styles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty lofty, ambitious goal that he has.
Let me pause right there. Does that include all the subcategories or just the major ones?
As I'm getting into the subcategories soon, yes, it does.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So it's, after all of that is said and done, they're included last week's write-up was about New England IPAs. So there's a little over 100 styles that I'm writing about. Usually getting out like once or twice a week. So it keeps me busy, definitely.
For sure.
But it's fun. It allows me to kind of get into the history of every one of the styles. And that's something I'm interested in anyway. So I'm doing that consistently, which is fun. So I'm liking it.
Okay.
Well, I gotta heap some praise on your efforts and the efforts of the website overall, because I was reading an article just within the last couple of weeks regarding the Baltic Porter style, which I brewed for the first time just a couple weekends ago. And the Baltic Porter is a beer that's always kind of eluded me. Like I've always I'm a dark beer guy. I like the stouts, the porters. Definitely in that realm. Baltic Porter, of course, is a different animal because it's a lager, because the gravity's higher. There's just a lot of uniqueness to it. The article that you have on homebrewacademy.com on that style really helped me refine not only my technique, but also the recipe that I designed for it. So, and honestly, the material there is really, really good. So I highly recommend. And it's broken down into style, really across the page. So there's how to, like this one I'm referring to is how to brew a Baltic Porter. You have other articles for Czech Pilsners, just for, I would, I'd lose my train of thought going through all the styles here, but but it's plentiful.
Yeah, yeah, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. Obviously, I've been doing it for how many years now? 7 years now. So it's something that's piqued my interest, and it's something that is just sort of universal when it comes to thinking about how much beer there is out there, and just being able to look up the history of it, and then look up how you want to brew it, what actually is said to make that specific style its own.
Right.
Right.
That's
Do you have a beer of choice yourself?
I was just asked this question a couple nights ago with some home brewers. Not really. I mean, I'm all over the place. I guess I'm more of a West Coast IPA guy, as opposed to the hazy stuff. Although Old Irving makes a terrific hazy IPA, and I'm blanking on the name of it right now. Yeah, someone will probably come up with the name of it. And let's see what else. Brown ales, I've always been a fan of, both American and English. Stouts, porters. So I'm pretty much all over the board. I like my lagers, and so yeah, a little bit of everything.
All right.
We had I think less than a month ago, because we do the webcast here every Thursday, and we had a guest on a couple weeks ago, and I saw that person just right here on the website for homebrewacademy.com, and that's Marty Nichol.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and George, do you remember? I don't remember the website coming up in our discussion with him. Do you?
I remember his personal website that kind of talks about what he does, but I don't think he mentioned that he writes for Homebrew Academy.
I don't necessarily know if Marty is writing for Homebrew Academy. I know he was offering up some classes.
Okay.
That he kind of specializes in, that I think are affiliated with his website.
Okay.
He's a wealth of knowledge.
He is.
He really was.
He used to do a really cool beer fest in the city, and now because of COVID, of course, it seems to have gone away. Hopefully not forever. But it was in the city, where a lot of the TV shows are filmed, like the Halstead area, Halstead, and I'm blanking on where exactly it's at. But yeah, it was a really cool fest that he used to do a lot of cool things.
Nice. Yeah. All right.
What's been the most recent project, homebrew wise?
Beer wise, well, I'm definitely the 99 beer thing with Homebrew Academy. And then in August, I was called by Marshall Schott over at Brewlosophy to join the Brewlosophy gang. So I'm doing both Brewlosophy and Homebrew Academy at the same time.
Writing?
That is taking up a lot of my time with brewing.
Okay.
No complaints at all. And I actually inherited one of the members, one of the contributors' brewing system. His a dual unibrow system. So I'm doing the simultaneous batches like Brewlosophy is known for. That is definitely keeping me busy. I did my first one with them. It was a rosemary IPA that came out about a month ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, sorry. So you're talking about the 99 beers and things, and so I live out in the middle of nowhere. Turn left and you'll find me. So one of the big things that holds me back from like making 10-gallon batches is who's going to drink all this beer.
Yes.
So when
Yes.
you're making 99 different styles, and did you say every weekend they're brewing?
I'm not doing it myself. I'm just writing about it.
Right. But you said they are brewing every weekend,
there
right?
is a guy by the name of Martin Keene who's doing it.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't quite know how he does it.
Okay.
Because
I guess, yeah, I mean, the two questions I'd have is what size are they brewing? Are they doing 5-gallon batches or is it like a 1-gallon batch? And the second one is obviously who's drinking all this beer?
Yeah, I think to answer your first question, I think it's mostly 5-gallon batches, although at times Martin in his videos has mentioned that he's done a 2.5-gallon batch. And to answer your second question, I think it's kind of indicative of the whole homebrew community and the beer community as a whole.
Sure.
We're a very generous group, and we like to share.
Right.
I'm assuming that he has a lot of friends that he likes to share his beer with, as do we.
Well, yeah. Well, and the other, I think about the real estate and things like if I were to push it, I could probably, as long as they were similar styles, which if you're going through the subcategories, they're going to be similar styles.
Mm-hmm.
I could ferment probably about three at the same time in like a 5-gallon carboy.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Right. So I'm wondering, like, in his setup, I guess, I mean, as soon as he's skipping from one style to another, that they need different temperature ranges and things like that. I mean, the logistics of that is just kind of warping me,
Definitely, without a doubt. I can see how that could be difficult, just to all the logistics of it and planning everything out. But Martin seems to have it down.
Sure,
from what the videos indicate, but who knows? But I think I would like to challenge myself to do that same thing one day, but I don't know. There's too many variables.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Well, yeah. So I assume you can get, obviously the style guides that Jason was talking about, as well as I assume you guys have recipes. I should have done my homework. I'm sorry. It's been a crazy week.
No,
so you guys have like recipes and how-tos and things like that on there as well?
Yeah. Basically what I do is I break down every article into about 4 sections, where the first is the history of the particular style. Then there is the BJCP guidelines in terms of what is the appearance, what is the mouthfeel, stuff like that of each beer. And then also, if you were to brew this yourself, what would it look like? What would be the base malt that you would want to go after? What yeast would you want to target? Would you want to do a late addition, hop addition, or just whatever the styles kind of dictate, basically, if you're following just the style guidelines. And then also, what are the numbers? What is the SRM, the IBUs, so on and so forth. And then I always end each article with Martin's recipe. Okay. Yeah.
All right. That's good. You can riff on that, make a clone of it, and
definitely.
I'm assuming it's recipes that he is familiar with, that are, if you do them right, it's going to give you a good idea of the style.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
He actually received a sponsorship, I believe, from Atlantic Brew Supply. So they have all of Martin's recipes in kits that you can buy in their store. I think they're somewhere on the East Coast. Or exactly where, but yeah, you can go there, and you can even go online and look for all their kits, which is kind of
nice.
Cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, I I was talking with Jason earlier today, and I don't know how deep you get into this, Steve, but I live on a well. I'm on a well. So every once in a while, I'll send out my beer for testing over at Ward Labs because they come back with a pretty reliable, pretty cost-effective chemical analysis for brewing and things. So what's your experience with water chemistry and how that affects the beer?
Not much experience.
Okay.
I have to say that's been the one thing that's kind of the newest endeavor for me with brewing. For many years, I've been going to the neighborhood grocery store and buying either distilled water or RO water, and just kind of building my recipe from there, because it just gives it a nice blank slate, and I can just kind of, add my salts and whatnot myself.
For sure.
And so, but as of late, I've actually started using filtered water, which we have. Jason knows this. We have Lake Michigan water, so it's pretty decent. I think the best comment I've ever received from a judge, was I did a stout once, and I submitted to a competition, and he said your water chemistry was spot on. And I was just telling a friend about this a couple of weeks ago. All I did was I took filtered water, put it in a bucket, let it sit overnight, and started brewing in the morning. I did absolutely nothing with it. But our water in Chicago and in the suburbs here, as long as you're getting Lake Michigan water, it's so good for dark beers that you don't really need to do much. And actually, that whole idea of entering in your numbers into like Beersmith, or I use Brewer's Friend for everything. It kind of baffled me for a long time, I'll be totally honest. And I just recently kind of got the hang of it. And even for like an IPA that I've been doing for Brewlosophy, I built it up from Lake Michigan water, and didn't really have to add that many salts to it.
Because Lake Michigan water, if I remember correctly, has a decent amount of bicarbonates and like salts already in it, like magnesium and calcium and things, which is really good for those darker beers.
Definitely.
And if we want to, I was thinking maybe that's why I asked you the question about what your experience with water chemistry is. I have both of them, my old one and my new one, pulled up here, that we could do a comparison, but if we want to go a different direction, we can do that as well.
I think I would need to do a little more studying of water chemistry. I'm nowhere near.
We'll do that another time then. That's not a problem.
Talk about it.
Okay.
I can chime in just my 2 cents on that, because I mean I'm intimidated by the science of water chemistry. I mean, honestly, and I'm not ashamed to say that. Like Steve, you mentioned earlier on this point, and I'll echo it because it's true for me as well. For me, simple works. As much as you can keep your process and setup simple, it's to everybody's advantage. Water chemistry, I understand it well enough to know the tools that work for me. And that's number one, we have good brewing water here in the Chicagoland area if you're on the Lake Michigan system, which Steve, you and I are.
Right.
And second of all, we have a great tool in the brew and water calculator that if you just have that framework of what the water is, the spreadsheet does all the work for you. Right. So you don't have to do a lot of reading of like measuring and reading and understanding all the facts. You can just trust that the tools that you have are working properly. Right. And to me, that's enough.
Yeah. And you mentioned two very good ones, Brewer's Friend, and I think you said the Beersmith calculator that they put in Beersmith 3. Jason and I, for a couple of years now, have used, and I assume you're still using it, Jason, is the Brew and Water spreadsheet that is available. And, he's right. I mean, knowing the tools gives you a lot of flexibility to not have to worry about, all right, how is the sodium reacting with the magnesium to XYZ? You know, it's just like, what do I need to make this water suitable for that? Now,
Definitely.
the one thing I will say about mine versus your guys is like your guys is higher in salts. You have a lot of bicarbonates, a lot of calcium, magnesium, and things. I'm just remembering from the time we looked over your water report, Jason. But mine is kind of the reverse of that. I'm really low on all those things. So I have, very few in sodium, calcium, magnesium, bicarbonates. My bicarbonates are 33, which is ridiculously low for brewing and things.
That is low. So are you adding baking soda to a lot of your water profiles?
Ton of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
But while your guys is really good for the darker beers, like porters, stouts, brown ales, things like that, mine is much better for the lighter ones, the ales, the pilsners, and things like that don't require all those salts to be present. So it's just a matter of, there's no such thing as bad. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say that. There is such thing as bad water, but assuming it's not contaminated, there's no such thing as a bad water chemistry. It's just a matter of tweaking it from
There's
there.
always something you can do with it to make it better.
Right.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I think I like the simplistic approach just because I don't have the wealth of knowledge with, like you're saying before, Jason, about how the magnesium, reacts to this or to that. But yeah, if I can just keep it simple and rely on the software that I have, I'm just starting to get into that now. And I'm realizing that, I don't need to know everything. I just need to know how can I go from point A to point B and make a somewhat decent beer.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, hats off to those people that, created those tools to make that more accessible.
Oh, God, yeah.
That's just opened the door for so many brewers to be able to just, I have like half a dozen different salts, and that's all I need. Whatever I need to make it, I just, add X grams of this, Y grams of that, and, I'm good to go.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay.
So what about, do you keg?
I just started.
Okay.
I got a great deal from an old friend of mine on a chest freezer. I had my eyes on it for, just the whole idea of kegging for a while. I think I was like one of the last ones in my homebrew club to actually still bottle. So that's a whole nother learning curve that I'm just trying to, learn right now. It was kind of the prerequisite with joining Brewlosophy, just for the consistency factor. So yeah, I need to get that down and a little honed in.
What's kind of your goal for it? Do you plan on having like a kegerator and taps, or are you just going to keep the kegs cold and have picnic taps? What's that going to look like?
I have a 14 cubic foot chest freezer with 6 taps right now.
Oh wow! Okay.
Some room in there if I wanted to expand.
Wow, 6 taps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. The goal is to have 5 beers, 4 beers and a cider maybe, and then some hop water on tap consistently. So
why the hop water?
Just because I like it.
You do? Okay.
That's good enough.
Me. Yeah.
I've had people have made me hop teas before.
Okay.
And it just no. Well, I mean, but you're more of a fan of the West Coast stuff, so that hoppy character is much more up your alley. See,
definitely.
Jason tends towards the darker beers, and I tend towards the Belgian beers. So, so that hoppy character is a little foreign.
Right. I once had a beer called the Fruit of the Devil, and it was a Belgian IPA. and I could have sworn I did some research on it one night. I don't think I was drunk, but I actually think I did this, where I read somewhere that the people in Belgium thought of hops as like a precursor to like the devil. I don't know where that came from. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm not saying it is, but I thought I read it somewhere. So I don't know. But it made for an interesting name.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, my search history is just nuts because like I hear stuff like that and I search for it. So I just search for hops and the devil. And
Yeah.
How many beer geeks are going to be just livid at us if this is truly a thing?
Or
I'll try to look it up and we'll have to talk about it. Yeah, if I can find something on it. They'll
send you messages endlessly about it. And
exactly.
Why are you?
Hey, that works too. It's all about that community engagement.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Okay, so what came up? What's the verdict?
What came up was a lot of beers.
Okay.
Victory as Hop Devil and
I guess that would make sense.
Hops the Devil, and so what came up was a bunch of different beers. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit more searching.
This came up a couple weeks ago too. That here in the United States there is one authentic Trappist brewery.
Yes.
And it's in Massachusetts. Is that correct, George?
Yeah, just outside of Boston in Massachusetts.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Huh, I never knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, most of them are in Belgium, France, and Spain. There's a few in the UK, but there's one official one in the US. So,
Road trip.
Post-COVID road trip. Which apparently we're gonna have to rent a bus from Chicago to with all the people we're inviting.
Exactly. We'll start in Virginia, veer around the Midwest. We'll go across the Great Lakes, and then
up through Buffalo. And...
Exactly. There's a lot. There's a lot to cover. That's true.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh my gosh. Okay. What have we? What's okay? You mentioned a learning curve with kegs. Are you? Do you feel like you've kind of hopped over that hurdle, or what's?
Not yet. I think the getting my kegs, getting my beer, so where I can actually be happy with the level of carbonation. And just trying to finagle multiple kegs at one time. Where one is pouring perfectly and carbonated perfectly, and then another one that just comes on tap. I want to get that one going. So just trying to get the consistency down. So.
Well, and that raises a question. When there's a couple different ways to slice this, is when you set it up for multiple kegs. So when you set up your CO2, did you set it up into a manifold where all the kegs have to be at the same pressure?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And that's what I did too. And so for bringing new beers up to pressure, what I've done in the past is I've closed off the manifold for the other kegs temporarily, and then cranked up the pressure to bring that up, and then turn it back down to where it needs to be, and reopen the manifold for the rest of the beers.
Gotcha.
Once it's up to pressure, so that way you can pressurize that one without over pressurizing the other.
Another one, right? That makes sense. That really does make sense. And I thought that was the route that I should take, but hearing from people with more experience than I have is always a good thing.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when I built my kegerator for inside the house, though, I did go with the a regulator with 2 outlets on it instead of a manifold.
Okay.
And that's largely because I've got 2 taps on it, and one of them is kind of dedicated to sparkling water, which is a much higher carbonation
Mm-hmm.
than your average beer, especially
Right.
Belgians. So I wanted to make sure that I could have that a little bit more unbalanced than a manifold would allow.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that freedom that you have there. That's good.
Yeah. But for 6, it gets expensive real quick.
Yeah. The beer money that I've been earning the last year or so is, it dwindles quickly after you start to build such a beast like I built. So it's
Does your kegerator, does your Keyser that you built, does it have the compressor hump?
yes, it does.
Okay, so are you able to fit a 5-gallon on top of that, or?
Yeah, I fairly certain. Right now, I used a 2.5 gallon little small guy.
Okay,
I put it on there.
That's what I was going to suggest.
Yeah.
George and I both have that 2.5 gallon mini
Yeah.
keg. I think it's great.
I think it is too. I think I'll probably dedicate that to either hop water or if I'm taking whenever COVID stops and we can have beer fests where home brewers serve their own beers. I would like to use that for fests and stuff like that. I do with Pale, just so it's easier to have a 2.5 gallon keg to move around as opposed to the 5-gallon one.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a great point. Yeah, I was just thinking. Yeah, because George and I have served at many different beer festivals in the last 5 years since we started home brewing. But yeah, the times that we brought full 5-gallon corny kegs, we've not cleared out a full 5 gallons, but I think 2.5 gallons. I think your odds are pretty good. You could go with a full one, and it's gone by the day's end.
Right. Well, and I was going to say it's not the least expensive route to go.
Exactly.
But 2.5 gallon kegs will fit in an average chest cooler. So where a 5-gallon won't, where you can close the lid. So even if you wanted to bring 5 gallons, you could bring 2 of those and keep one chilled on ice.
Yeah.
While you're serving the other one.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like I said, it's not the cheapest option in the world.
No, things are really expensive.
Yeah, they are. I think it's just not used as often.
Yeah. I got lucky. I found one on Amazon for like $80 and I thought it was a steal.
Oh, it is $80. You're doing really good with that.
Yeah.
Is it silver one with 2 kind of like pronounced handles on it?
No, but I know what you're talking about. I didn't find that one. This one looks just like a 5-gallon one, but just shorter. Yeah, it has all
I do have a question on that note. Did you go with the ball lock or the pin lock?
Pin lock.
Pin lock.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did not know they made those size kegs with the pin locks. I guess I'm not surprised. I just did not know that until now.
It's the same connection, so it just would be a different standoff. But what made you choose the pin lock over the ball lock?
I think it was just available. And,
okay.
Yeah, just mostly just what was available. And a friend of mine was getting rid of some 5-gallon kegs, so I just decided to keep it consistent. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I've heard pros and cons to both of them. The ball locks tend to be a little easier to work with sometimes, but the pin locks, from my understanding, have less of a tendency to kind of get loose and leak. As far as like CO2 and things.
Yeah.
So,
I've been learning that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Some posts that have been a little loose. Some connections that have been a little loose. So I was out there last Saturday with the squirt gun with the dish soap and everything and trying to find the leaks and stuff like that. I had to run over to Chicago Brew Works a couple times to get some new tanks of CO2. So it, like I said, it's a learning curve. It's something that I'm going through, and it's at the end of the day, it'll be worth it. That's what I keep on telling myself.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we've got so we talked about water, talked about kegging. Can we talk about yeast and fermentation? What kind of what kind of setup do you have for as far as fermentation?
So it was about 3-4 years ago. My wife contacted a good friend of mine from the homebrew club and asked him, Rick, how do I purchase this piece of equipment for Steve for Christmas? And so she bought me a 5 cubic foot chest freezer. So I've used that for fermentation.
Okay.
Before that, I was pretty much going anywhere and everywhere in my house to put a bucket or a carboy. I'm using buckets now, but carboys in the past. If the temperature in my living room or my dining room was around 68 degrees, that's where the carboy goes. Put a nice little case over it and keep it out of the light. But then after a while, I kind of noticed that a lot of my beers I was dumping because just the consistency with the temperature was not where it should be. So,
right.
I've been one to kind of go overboard with brewing, where I'm brewing. And since I am a teacher, I have the summers off, so I'm brewing constantly in the summer, and without the real accurate temperature control, I'm done, throwing away batches of beer that don't come out well.
So you can probably speak to this, like when you moved to a fermentation chamber,
mm-hmm.
The difference with your beer must have been night and day, was it?
Yeah, just the consistency of it, and knowing that I can set the Inkbird for a certain temp and not really have to worry about, is the temperature in the middle of the day going to rise to 75 degrees in my dining room, or if I have a beer, I've even had buckets and carboys of beer in my crawl space, which typically gets kind of cool most of the time throughout the year, but you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
So, right. Yeah, there is that sense of consistency, that sense of you don't have to worry about it too much anymore. Although I will say that my bathroom downstairs could be a really good place to do some Belgian beers, or maybe some, I don't know, anything with Kvik yeast. So there are some areas where I can kind of tinker with some things and bring them back into the house. But for the most part, yeah, it's the temp control. I now have a collar on the 500 foot chest freezer, so I can fit 2 buckets in there comfortably, and not have to worry about, not being able to close the lid and everything.
Cool.
So yeah.
You mentioned Kvik yeast a second ago. A recurring topic here is sours, and we have plans that we're going to do an audio podcast in the not so distant future where we're going to talk about sours kind of from beginning to end.
Okay.
And the tone around sours around this webcast it's very polarizing. No one really has kind of a mild opinion of sours. You either love them or you absolutely can't stand them. Okay. Do you have your own take on sours?
I love them.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I will be the first one to tell you I brewed one traditional, quote unquote, traditional sour with some friends. There was a guy in my homebrew club who, him and his buddy, nailed this sour for many years. I don't know if they're still brewing right now, but they were they had a really good knack at just consistently brewing really good sours. So I'm like, I got to learn from you. So a buddy and I went to his place once in the summer, and we brewed 20 gallons, 15 gallons, 20 gallons of a sour. It turned out really good. And then just recently, actually, with some other friends, I did a. Have you heard of Philly sours?
I have not.
Okay, so there's this newish yeast out on the East Coast in Pennsylvania, hence the Philly sour, and basically it's a yeast that you don't have to let the beer age as long as you do with a traditional sour, but it's not the quick process like a kettle sour. So you're still kind of brewing the same way as you would just normal beer, and then you I believe the temperature is pretty much like 68 to 72 or 73 degrees Fahrenheit, and it gives you a pretty decent sour beer. I think we mixed it with some watermelon juice, and another one was with wild berry. There was a particular juice out there you can find at grocery stores, Nature's Choice or something like that, I think it's called. It comes in like half-gallon jugs. So we froze that and then brought it back to room temperature or refrigerator temperature, whatever. And we basically just got all of the juice that was left over from the ice that had formed. If that makes sense.
Oh, wow.
Well, basically,
Okay.
basically what you're doing is you're concentrating the juice itself
Right.
on your own instead of just buying, a concentrated thing at the grocery store.
Right.
The watermelon it turned out really good. It was probably one of the better fruited sours I've had in a while.
Okay.
So that was really good. But yeah, I always kind of think in the back of my mind, if I'm not like, brewing something either for philosophy or just on my own, like I should always spend some time brewing, a golden ale or something just to kind of have it to sour. But yeah, I'm all for sours.
Steve is on Team Sours, George.
Nice. We'll get you there, Jason. We'll get you there.
It may take the audio podcast to do that, but we'll see.
See, here's the thing. It's like, I look at sours the same way I look at West Coast IPAs. There are good ones, and there are very good ones. Most of them, especially like a year or two ago when they really kind of came into vogue again, were bad. Just like a lot of the original hop bomb, no actual flavor, just as much hops and bitterness as you can get West Coast IPAs.
Mm-hmm.
But as the style has developed, as more people have gotten, keyed into it and really tried to develop it into, okay, we're not just going to try to blow the person's palate away, but give them a good balance of fruit and tart and everything like that. They've gotten a hell of a lot better. And I think that's where my enjoyment of sours has really come from lately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always said that a sign of a good sour is when it hits right here in your jowls. And that's when I know that I've encountered a really good sour.
Wow.
So
yeah, I know the feeling. Yeah.
It's not something that I can drink every day. But
no.
Time it's still a damn good beer. So
I'll tell you, people can overdo it.
Jason.
What's that?
You'll have to come over to the dark side soon.
I'm feeling the pull. I'm not quite ready to give into it, but I'm feeling the pull.
And I'll tell you that you can certainly overdo it and just make it something silly. But those ones that do add, but no, what I was gonna say is those ones that do add like a little bit of lactose and give just a little bit of sweetness to balance the sour.
Right.
That is like there's one called Das Yummy, and that's what they do. It's a sour beer, and then they have a little bit of lactose in there, so to give a little bit of sweetness, and that just balances and smooths everything out, and it's really quite good.
I know.
But, yeah.
Noon Whistle is doing a lot of good sours these days. That's one that to definitely check out, I think.
Jason, isn't that the one that served me a cucumber beer? Yeah.
Yeah. I will never, ever forgive Noon Whistle for that. They had, I won't go too deep on this, but we took George to Noon Whistle for his birthday one year, a few years ago. And they had a cucumber flavored Saison on their menu.
I remember that beer.
Yeah.
I didn't try it, but I do remember hearing about it.
I'll never forgive them for it.
Yeah. There was the same guy who introduced me to brewing sours, actually. Him and his buddy brewed a cucumber hibiscus sour that was just phenomenal. And how to recreate that, I have no idea.
That's interesting. Okay, so I would think the hibiscus would mellow it.
Yes,
which I could see. I could see that. I could see that coming out nicely.
The cucumber was just kind of lingering in the background. You knew it was there, but it wasn't punching you in the face where it's off-putting or offensive. Because I can understand how
that's what this Noon Whistle one did.
Yeah, cucumber is one of those flavors that just it's good when it's subtle. It's not so great if it's punching in the mouth. So
I could say the same thing just about the Saison style, and I think it's a factor of just its own nature because the yeast that you use for Saisons is around the hotter end,
right?
So that in itself, embarks a character on a beer that's going to be, very, very specific. And I feel like you have just a very narrow window to get that right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, then your beer's just going to be skunky and just not good.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right, away from sours. Okay, something else.
I tried, George. I tried.
Yeah, I know. Thanks. Just adding more voices to the choir.
There you go.
So you mentioned hop water, which I find interesting. I know very little about hop water, but I find it interesting. Do you have other beverages that you experiment with making?
I haven't. I did try the hop water once. Commercially, I purchased you guys had mentioned it earlier, a hop tea. There's a company out that sells cans, like a tallboy cans of hop tea, and they have different hop varieties. And then it's just either a black tea, green tea, whatever, chamomile tea, with different varieties of hops. That's actually something that I wouldn't mind testing out maybe in the summertime, kind of seeing where you can go. But yeah, I haven't really ventured out too much other than hop water.
Okay. Not mead? Haven't taken the dive yet?
I haven't taken the plunge with mead, mostly because of the fact that it's just so expensive to buy honey at that volume.
True.
And I've been trying to keep the wife happy and not spend too much on our money.
Fair enough. Yeah, home brewing is not the cheapest hobby. That's very
really
true.
Not. It's really not. People say, "Oh, you're going to save so much money." And, you might want to say that to yourself. And
it sounds great, and it makes sense on paper until you start building up a setup.
Oh yeah. I mean, I actually being connected with philosophy these days, this is going to sound ridiculous, but it's definitely true. The crew at Philosophy gets their hops from Yakima Valley hops, right? And so Yakima sent us a bucket of a bunch of hops. I had like 6 pounds of hops in the bucket. So I'm stashing them in my freezer. They're ready to go whenever I need to do some experiments and stuff like that. So Marshall texts me one night and goes, "Hey, dude, how are you good on hops?" And I'm like, I'm getting dinner for my family out one night, and I'm like, believe it or not, I don't know how this is true, but I'm actually good. I have enough hops in my freezer, and if you were to look at my freezer right now in my garage, it is stacked with hops on the door and on the top shelf. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's all over the place. It's kind of embarrassing, actually. My wife does not like going into the freezer.
Maybe I'm overthinking this, but the creation of hop water, do you just chuck hops in water in a keg?
No. So there is a bit of a process to go through. You will want to boil your water just to make sure that you're keeping. Or I'm sorry, let me take that back. You heat up your water to about 170 degrees, and then you will add your hop addition at that time, and then let it sit for as long as you really want, and then begin cooling your water. Just as if you were to do that with wort, and then you could keg it. You could. I've done it in the past where you would dry hop it then afterwards. It just depends on how much of a hophead you really are, and go from there. Keg it up.
So
go from there.
Is the main difference between hop tea and hop water that hop water is cold?
I've had experience with hop tea in terms of something that you can drink out of a can, or hop tea like I've heard of it as like an experiment with like different hops, and you can test out the flavor and aromas of different hops. So
that's how I've heard it too. But it's when in hop tea, you basically steep hops at probably about 170, like you're saying, and then you just drink it.
Right.
So it sounds like you just take the extra step of cooling it, and then it becomes a little bit more of like a iced tea kind of situation. With hops.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's good especially if you're wanting to. Every once in a while, it sounds crazy, but I'll try to cut down on the drinking during the week. But having a hop water during the week does help and kind of get your mind off of I haven't had a beer in a while, so whatever works. Now,
okay, not bad. Okay. Yeah.
I first encountered hop water from Lagunitas, and they came out with a 4-pack of their hop water. So I was hooked ever since.
In a 4-pack.
Okay.
All right. Well, that sounds like something I would want to experiment with myself as opposed to go out and make, because it sounds relatively simple to make.
Yeah, it is. It is. And you can play around with different hop varieties. Your different hop pairings, just as if you were to make a beer. Go with your traditional, sea hops, West Coast style. Do a lot of the New World, Australian or New Zealand hops. It's limitless, and you can have so many different varieties.
Yeah.
So,
and if you have a 2.5 gallon mini keg,
Right.
You can experiment with it and
Exactly.
not have to devote 5 gallons to it.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So you, being a member of Pale, you have experience with entering beers into competitions, sounds like.
Yes.
Do you have a piece of advice for the homebrewers out there who may be looking at entering a competition for the first time? And I always bring this up because George and I learned a lot of harsh lessons of entering competitions because we didn't totally have a picture of what we were getting into.
Do your research ahead of time. Is I think, and this is something that I've learned with writing for Homebrew Academy, especially the 99 beer project, where everything is pretty much laid out for you in the BJCP styles, and there's a lot of talk about I'm not brewing a style, I just want to brew whatever I want to brew. Brewing like that is perfectly fine, and there's a time and a place for it, 100%. But if you're going to brew for a competition, you need to remember that there are guidelines like everything else, and that's what the judges base their criticism on. And it's all laid out for you right in the BJCP styles. And if you're thinking about recipe development and creating that recipe, if the style guidelines say this beer has a hint of caramel, you're not going to add a whole pound of caramel malt, caramel 20 or crystal 20 or whatever the case may be, because there's certain indicators in the language. I think I guess being interested in writing and linguistics and whatnot and everything else with being an English major is definitely taking over. And there's a reason why they say, a subtle hint of caramel or, a light malt or light roastiness in, say, like a Schwartz beer or something like that. So,
sure.
Yeah, read up on the guidelines, I think, is the best advice that anyone, I think, could offer. I've had some decent luck with competitions, but at times, it's difficult. It depends on who enters, and a lot of it is just luck.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to a lot of times.
Yeah. So now that we're in the throes of winter, are you is your brewing schedule changed at all? And part of the reason I bring that up, I always find it very funny that the two biggest homebrewing competitions here in Chicagoland are in March, which is driving most homebrewers to be brewing in their garages in December and January, which is a little unforgiving.
It is. And I was just actually talking to homebrewers a couple nights ago about the same exact topic.
That makes me feel great that I'm not the only one talking about this.
No, you're not, because I was actually thinking about it, and I go through a bit of a brewing hiatus right around this time of year because it's cold out. I don't want to open up my garage door, and I don't want to sit out there. Although within the last few years, I've actually gotten comfortable with my system and how I'm brewing, where I can go out there, let my water get to temperature. So I'll stay out there for that part. And then I'll walk back into the house as I'm mashing in, go back in the house for an hour. And then, I come back out, squeeze the bag, pull the bag out, clean it, and then go ahead and get my burner boiling, or get my burner going again, and get my wort to a boil, and then I can go back in the house and not have to stay outside in the cold. So
nice.
Yeah, it works sometimes. At times, there's always issues, but it's always a good thing.
Yeah. Well, we're not the only ones thinking about this. Okay, so there's an opportunity for change, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, knowing the climate here in the Midwest, I mean, I think there's some strong points to be had about just like, the challenges of meeting those competition deadlines when you're in the throes of winter.
Definitely, and maybe I'm thinking about availability. That was always one thing that, looking at numbers of people who are available in the summertime, to even just to attend a meeting. I've just spent the last 4 years being vice president and then president of PALE. So I'm well versed in that whole dynamic of looking at numbers and like, oh, okay, we have a lot of people here today, and that's surprising because typically in the middle of July we don't, because people are on vacations with their families and stuff like that.
True.
So maybe that's part of the reason why those big competitions are. I don't know. I don't really know myself.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd fully considered that, but yes, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But yeah, I've thought about it before though. I'm just like you. Why can't this be, maybe in the early part of summer or late spring or something like that? Yeah. Get those beers brewed in the fall and let them age a little bit if it's appropriate, though.
That's, I mean, because at the homebrew meetings that I go to, we've said that for the last couple of years, is we'll start talking about that in the late fall, just with that in mind, because this may seem like, we're a long ways away from these competitions. It's not nearly as far as you might think when you think that you've got Thanksgiving ahead, you got Christmas ahead, and then you've got some really bad weather behind that.
Right.
So you really can't think about those timelines too soon.
Right. Yeah, it's a crapshoot. I entered the competition, or the national competition, with HomebrewCon, and it was I placed in the first round in the Chicago area. This is a couple of years ago, and then I had to brew for the second round in Portland. So I had to take in consideration, sending the beer out, and all the time that was involved there, and also it was an IPA, so I needed to make sure that it was brewed not too early, but again, not too late either, because there's that window of time. If you're familiar with the Brewing Network podcast, they talked about one time their host, Justin Crosley, mentioned something to some brewer out on the West Coast. He never mentioned his name, but he was like, God, this IPA tastes like cardboard. What the hell was wrong with this? And someone next to him kind of, put their arm around him and said, sometimes beers that are really, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't cardboard. It was some other perceived off flavor, but it was because the beer was so young, and it wasn't like there's this.
Okay.
What's his name from 21st Amendment? Sullivan had said something about how, and I think he said this number in jest. He doesn't really, don't hold him to it, but like this 23-day window where an IPA becomes good to excellent. And it's that maturation of the hops and the malt and everything else. So we all say, and we all check our dates and everything on cans and bottles and whatnot, drink fresh and everything, which I totally get. But there's that, this is a little too fresh or a little too new, or green, as sometimes we say. So,
I'm really glad we're talking about this, because I think every style has their own version of this to some degree.
For sure. And on either end of the spectrum, right?
Exactly.
A Saison isn't going to be that great of a beer until it matures, after, maybe a month or 6 weeks or so.
I'd put stouts and porters in that category too.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because I feel like the body continues to form in those beers.
Yes.
Yeah, during that time.
But then if you add coffee to it, you don't want to age too much.
Ooh, yeah, good call. Because then it's just that chalkiness that just ends up taking over.
Right.
That's true.
That whole green pepper flavor that just does not go well.
I was talking with somebody who does law work for the beverage industry. This was not here on the webcast. It was in my regular work, and this was about a year ago. But one of the things that he told to me was that for IPAs specifically, your window for IPAs is, like you were saying, about day 23 from the day it gets packaged to about day 90.
Yeah.
And then after day 90, it's just a law of diminishing returns.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah. And so kind of bring it back to your question about the competitions and, needing to kind of strategically think about, okay, well, the beer is going to be tested or tasted and judged on this date. That's a given. So we know that. When can I perceivably brew this, bottle it, and ship it? And hopefully all those, variables are working in your favor. And how can you, produce the best, opportunity for you to place? So
I think this is a really good thing for people to think about. And I think I don't know if this is talked about a whole lot as far as to planning for a competition.
Probably not. Probably not, because I think it's something that it depends on how geeky you want to get into it.
Yeah, true.
Obviously, have gone into that realm.
Well, I mean, I think the listeners and viewers of this show, I think they care about their home brewing game enough that they're not only listening to this, but they're also paying attention to those small things that would make that difference in beer.
For sure. Yeah.
And that's, of course, a big goal of this webcast and podcast that we do here is, giving advice that people can put into practice in a simple, practical, and, straightforward way.
Mm-hmm.
So
definitely.
Yeah. And I imagine a lot of the same things can be said about your work with homebrewacademy.com and with Brewlosophy.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. There, and just being able to share that knowledge and also gain the knowledge from other people is always a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, it's great talking with you. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. This is a lot of fun. It's always good to talk to beer geeks that enjoy beer conversations as much as I do.
Absolutely.
My wife is always happy when I go and have friends to talk about beer, because then it's less that she has to listen to.
Yes. No, I can echo that experience myself. So just to throw out plugs, check out Steve at homebrewacademy.com and brewlosophy.com.
Yes.
Any other plugs you want to throw out?
No, that's it. I kind of gave up the idea of doing my own blog after I got interested in Homebrew Academy, and then of course Brewlosophy.
Okay.
But it's been a lot of fun writing for both of those publications.
Right on.
It's made me a better brewer, and it makes me continue to have fun with this hobby. So
that's awesome.
Awesome.
Well, before we close up, we do have some questions here in the chat that I don't want to close up without answering. Question was electric or propane natural gas?
Okay, so always with the brew in a bag system, it's always been propane. But now that I'm brewing with Brewlosophy, and I was mentioning the unibrow system, that's all electric. So I have my outlet in front of my house and then in my garage. So I plug into there, and again, another learning curve for me. I'm still kind of learning that system, but luckily I have friends who know it well. So there's always
all right
way.
Good deal. Good deal. And the last question just came in, and it's asking about cold crashing. And I'm not sure I'm not sure all the context, but cold crashing. And I think Steve, you'll echo these points too. Cold crashing is pretty much an essential element in, throughout the course of a home brewing batch. Because the ability to put the beer in a cold temperature and have the last of the yeast falling out and leaving you with a much cleaner, crisper beverage, behind is one step that's really going to kick up your home brewing game.
Definitely, and it doesn't really take you that long, to do. Yeah. So I've always thought of doing it, especially now that I'm kegging. Almost doing it simultaneously with when I'm carbonating the beer in the keg.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing some important step here, but it seems like that's something that you can do kind of simultaneously.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. And we were talking about the weather in great detail earlier. That's one thing that, works in our favor here in the Midwest is you don't need any special vessel to cold crash a beer in the wintertime. Right. Throw it in your garage. Yep. Throw it on your front porch, your back porch. Doesn't matter. Exactly. Let the elements work for you.
Exactly.
That's some top-notch homebrewing advice. I feel confident we can close up right on that good point. Steve Thanos, homebrewacademy.com and brewlosophy.com. Thank you again so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. Anytime, man.
Thank you. All right, before we close up, we do the webcast here every Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Our audio podcast is under the same name, A Nice Place to Brew. It's available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and all the places you get your podcast from. Our website is www.aniceplacetobrew.com, and our social media links are A Nice Place to Brew and Nice Place to Brew. I feel it's important to mention here we're coming up on the holidays, and the next Thursdays will fall on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. Our next webcast will be not next Thursday, it will be next Wednesday. So mark your calendars that the webcast will be one day early, available here on the Facebook and YouTube page. And also check out our YouTube page for all of our past episodes. We've been doing weekly episodes since the beginning of COVID-19, so we've built up quite a library. So if you can't wait till next Wednesday, check out our library on the YouTube. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great week. And we send out every show the same way as we raise a glass. And we say, it takes a lot of good beer to make great beer. Cheers.
Cheers.